Hey everybody, today we're going to do a stream style video because I want to react to this one video. I wanted to switch up the style. Let's switch up the style a little bit, okay? So it's a video by Jubilee and it's called Should Minors Transition? Detransition versus Trans. And I'm going to be down here. Wait, why is this like this? Warning, this is a sensitive subject, by the way. I'm sure you already knew that. But I just want to give you some context. I transitioned as a minor, took hormones as a minor. Had surgery as a teenager. I was 19. I know people are very, very opinionated on this shit. I'm just letting you know that I see both sides. So, anyways, let's do this shit.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
So I'm gonna just go ahead and answer that before anybody else does, because I want to say no, because I was a minor. So, also a very vague question though.
I transition as an adult and I have medical complications. I have mental health issues. Child cannot consent to a medical transition because kids want to eat ice cream every day. It doesn't mean that they should.
I kind of agree with you on that as well because we have so many rules and regulations when it comes to tobacco or alcohol or any type of drugs. Driving a car, you can't even rent a motel until you're like 25. There's some specific things that we need to put into place that I think would help protect our children because the minors themselves really don't know who they are until they become 25, 26 years old. Their minds aren't fully developed and it's
had me there, but I always hate the argument that kids don't understand who they are. And I already put this in my videos. Kids understand what gender is at a very, very young age. When I was doing my research on detransition, kids learn what gender is at a very young age. And even unrelated to gender, kids aren't stupid. Like, I know kids are kids and we could eat ice cream every day, but they're not dumb. We're not dumb as teenagers either. There's also adults who transition and then detransition. That kind of eliminates the point that we make about, kids regretting transition, because both kids and adults, that is a possibility for both people.
So I did transition as a minor. I was a teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and hated my body. And it ended with me kind of finding spaces where that was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body. And it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention being a double mastectomy at 16 before any hormones, before anything else. And because of transitioning at such a young age, in the past 6 months, I have watched my body fall apart and waste away in front of me. I have constant joint pain. I've watched my muscle mass waste away. I've watched my vocal cords hurt. I don't know if I'll ever be able to carry a child. The evidence we have suggests that the best way to figure out if gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is to let them grow up. Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming.
Yep.
I don't think that is true. I don't think that I've looked at there's no, when we're saying most of these kids are going to grow up and change their mind, I just don't believe that, because I don't, feeling gender dysphoria isn't a normal thing. I know that there can be things that are mixed up with that, but feeling dysphoria isn't a normal thing. And also sexuality and gender are two different things. I never identified with any gay labels when I was pre-transition, and I liked girls the whole time. But I did not want any of those labels because I didn't see myself as a girl or a woman. So I didn't see myself as a gay woman or a lesbian. I just saw myself as a straight man. Sucks for me.
Can the disagreeer step forward?
Sorry, I had an ad.
I mean, if we're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender-affirming care for trans youth. They say it's safe and it's life-saving. And there are numerous studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same scientists...
I have 10 studies that I can bring to you right now.
The same scientists that brought that up have since rolled it back and said it was never supposed to be applied the way it has. The American medical industry, we all know, is money hungry and has gone off the rails.
I do agree that there are definitely some doctors out there that may be taking advantage of trans people, and I'm sorry that you went through this. Truly, I really am sorry. But trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
Right.
It's healthcare.
I want to speak to that real quick. Like, I came out 13 years ago when I was 14, and I knew, not that I was trans, but that I was a boy. I had to go through a lengthy process of therapy and seeing an endocrinologist and like go through different tests and exams to make sure that this was real to everyone else involved. Transitioning and being trans was just a process I went through to become who I always knew I was. It wasn't like...
I went through the same process, by the way. That's the process that I was familiar with until we got into now 10, 13, 15 years later. When we hear stories like I had one appointment and then I got hormones or surgeries or whatever, like Luke was talking about, is actually very scary to me. I would not have liked that even if I was, 15-year-old me again. I loved the fact that I had to see a therapist for a while because I was young. It's still scary. Like, I could be very sure of what I'm doing, but it's still scary. You're younger. So I don't know, that shit is weird. Sometimes you do go into the therapist though, and they're like, "Here, take these antidepressants after one fucking session." Like, okay, all right, thanks. Thanks for looking at other solutions to what I'm telling you. Thank you.
Decision that I made, it was a life or death. And if I hadn't gotten on hormones and gotten surgery at 16, I don't know if I would be here.
As a father, I have 4 kids, and also as a trans person, I think that knowing what it looked like for me as a child and that experience of going through all of the turmoil and all of the trepidation around my gender identity, I would not put my children in that situation. And also, I don't think that surgeries should be allowed for minors. Like, when we look at the data and we look at the statistics and we look at the research, the vast majority of these surgeries are happening to adults. They're not minors. Yeah. So let's start there, right? And then further than that, if we look at puberty blockers are reversible. So when it comes to children, when we talk about puberty blockers, that gives them a shot. Yeah. And it gives them autonomy over their bodies. It gives them a space that they can explore their expression. They can explore who they are without surgeries, without all of these other things that could have permanent effects. My kids were maybe 8 and 10 when I started my transition. And so I talked to them in kid terms. I told my son, I said, look, your mom, dad wants to be a dad because that's how I feel. And my kids being so young, they understood it. They were like, okay, we're with it, And so as they got older, I would bring them into my world and get them to understand the things that maybe I was going through. But now that they're adults, they understand differences in people, not just trans people, but people in general.
So there is such thing as gender fluid. How
Yes.
do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on? We really actually don't have studies on children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life, you may still die from it, you don't know. You're
die
still
happy.
Exactly.
Oh my God. That's exactly what I said. People be like, you don't know the study's done, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, still, it makes me feel better. And I could say this with literally anything. What you put in your body, shit happens. But if this is going to make me happy and make me feel comfortable, I'm going to do it. I don't really care. I'd rather live a shorter life that is happy than a longer life that is miserable. That's just how I've always looked at it since I was a teenager, when I started T.
Die for ideology, and a lot of people have died for an ideology.
It's not an ideology.
But we have more
is.
people that are dying because
It's an
they're not
idea that you were
allowed
born
to
in the wrong
express
body.
themselves. Look
Okay.
at the suicide rate of trans masculine folks is at 55%. And one of the factors that could save their lives is support, right? And so if we have folks that are committing suicide because they're not allowed to transition, how do we fix that? If you're telling me the transition for children or minors is something that shouldn't be done.
I am very sensitive to this subject, as I've been the person who has had to talk people off the ledge when it comes to suicidality. the discussion around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community. You know, my parents were told, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? That's not an appropriate way to talk about that.
And I understand that, but
And
it is our transmasculine youth
I understand
that
that.
are at the highest risk
I
of
understand that,
suicide.
and they deserve help. But we also need to have a responsible conversation that is not using suicide as a means to push them down a pipeline before they have that comprehensive care.
So I have a question.
Sorry, Aris, I know you've been wanting.
Yeah. Oh, that's all. Yeah.
to say
Yeah, no,
something.
because I have
That is a scary thing to say to parents. I think I said that to my mom. but I was serious. Still not even. It's still that is a really it's a scary thing to say.
a big problem. Oh yeah, no, so, I'm not an interrupter. What I'm gonna say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do.
Right.
And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. And so I think taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is, it's anti-human.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of other?
That's so different.
No, wait, no,
understand,
hold on,
I
let me
understand they
answer
are
this
different
question for
things,
you.
but to what
No, you
level
can't
do
even
we,
make that
no, to what level do we give children bodily autonomy over everything they do? Because here's the thing, children need barriers in childhood development. You need barriers, and they need a safe way to push against those barriers. And I worry with the current medical system that instead of giving them a safe way to express themselves and push against barriers, we have taken some of those barriers away. And that is why you see more detransitioners, because those barriers have been lifted.
Yeah, they're not just doling out surgeries for children. That's not happening
I had a
anywhere.
letter from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office
And
before
that
I
was
had
abuse
the first.
from that therapist who did
Yeah,
not
that-
Yeah, that's
psychoanalyze
awful.
the
That
rest of
should
your
not
issues.
happen.
Right, and that shouldn't
because
have happened.
your
not
issues
happen
weren't
to you.
being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you're
I have a
addressing right
diagnosis
now.
of gender dysphoria as
And
well.
you shouldn't. You were misdiagnosed.
No, I have one.
Right.
Yeah, you had to get a second opinion, honey.
And how was
Can
I,
I-
how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told
That's
that I
not
would
your
kill
fault.
myself?
But your
Yeah, that's not your
parents,
fault.
your parents,
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting a medical system that they thought would help me, and the professionals apparently not doing the right thing
I
here.
understand, but your
Yeah,
parents were
absolutely
responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
I think that what this really highlights is the importance of you sharing your story, because what it shows is that you can't jump into these transitions, and you
Yeah.
shouldn't listen to these doctors that push you to transition
And
just
nobody
because you're
should.
feeling a certain way.
Social media
I felt like there was a conversation after that. I was ready. I was ready. Okay. Okay. I guess I don't really have too much to say about that. Like, hold on, let me go back for a second. I mean, when you are transitioning as a young person, as a minor, your parents do play a role in that because they are your parents, and they, you know, they have to discuss it with you and stuff like that. So, you know, as much as a parent is going to do as much as they can to help their kid. Like for what my mom did, she went to all my therapy sessions with me. She talked about it with me, obviously. We had so many discussions and all that great stuff. And she did what she thought was the best for me in this situation at this time. And that was letting me transition. And well and behold, here I am. 14 years later. I'm losing track. 14 years later. Hold on, wait a second. No, I'm not 30. 11 years later. It's only been that long. Feels like much longer. Is my hair? I don't know, man. I cut my own hair. Okay. Shouldn't have done that. You all should have yelled at me, told me not to cut my own hair.
social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
No. Brainwashes? Maybe influences. That I could see that happening. Maybe a little influences, but not brainwashes.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's this play that they have.
I don't think that it necessarily brainwashes children, but I think there are a lot of people who get into being queer or trans because it's trendy. And I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it, I have experienced it, and I also find that social media, especially apps like TikTok, give a lot of these kids so much misinformation and lead to people thinking they're trans when there are much deeper issues, and everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young. You know?
I think brainwash is such a strong
that's
word
a very
to use
aggressive
there
word. I
when
would
it's
not. That's why I hesitated to step forward.
And that's why I would step in and actually say it's more so of like a social contagion.
It's just, yeah.
What got me to transition in the first place?
Yeah, I think that there can definitely be some factors. I mean, it's with anything that you find online. You might come across posts and be like, oh, that's kind of how I feel or whatever, and then you could be wrong about it. That is a tough question. Because I said, like, perhaps maybe influencing, like it could influence people to think that they are trans. But I don't, maybe not though. Because then you could say that with anything though. Like any piece of content can be influential to somebody, anything, whether it's being trans or being gay or being conservative or being a liberal. Like, you're influenced by everything that you consume. But I don't know if trans is one of those things. I don't know. Let's just listen.
Was social media. It had a grasp on me that there could be something else out in the world for me during that discovery. And I played it to the fullest, 100%. I even passed as a female for a good, what was it, 6 years out of the 7 that I was transitioned. And later down the road, I went and paid out of pocket and talked to just a regular therapist, and she made me start questioning my own existence in a way, what I can do as a human being, not just as a male or a female, but what can I contribute to the society. And it made me open up to maybe I was born as a male, and it feels empowering to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was heavy on social media. Like in my transition, Tumblr, that was the place to be for sure. And everyone was talking about their transition from my experience, and everyone was talking about a lot of mental health issues, depression, and all of that. And it was kind of being trendy in that sense. Like when TikTok came out, like that was like a whole nother world. And the biggest thing that I found with that is like they weren't saying a lot of the negative things that were happening in their transition. There was always like a positive outlook on it, like I'm being who I need to be, like this is great.
This is the ticket to your happiness.
Yeah, and
how it's sold.
Like so much on social media, like I made a documentary on my transition, and I really went into depth of like a lot of my depression that I dealt with on that, and I didn't find anyone talking about that.
Jen, I personally didn't think I was.
That's insane, to be honest. I know that I shared a lot of negative aspects when it came to transition on my page, but there is a lot of negatives that come with it, obviously. I just think that people like to showcase the best parts of their lives. And as a general statement, I've seen a lot of trans videos. I'm trying to remember back when I used to watch them. I've seen a lot of trans videos with scary things in them too, mostly referring to top surgery and shit like that. I've heard some people say those things about seeing like just a positive, like super positive everything about being trans, and there are a lot of scary things that come with it. A lot of scary things that come with it. Not even just literally everything, even the outside aspects of life. So
I was trans till I saw earlier trans YouTubers. Before I was just gender bending man. And for sure, I also feel like comparing yourself on social media to other people that are more beautiful and successful will create dysphoria of some kind. And some people,
it will affect your self-image for sure.
Because we see all those beautiful trans women that are all dolled up or had every possible plastic surgery they could ever get. You're gonna feel dysphoria. You're gonna be like, I don't look like that.
I mean, that's
so I
in
have to go
general,
through
though.
steps.
You know what I mean? Whether you're cis
Right.
or trans, everyone
So social media has
dealing with
such a-
that for sure.
It has such a bad impact on
actors
mental
and stuff.
health.
I wanted to be that muscular dude, and I wanted to do
100%.
that. So
No.
yeah,
It is such a
does
bad,
exist.
like well-documented bad impact on people's like sense
Right.
of self and mental health, and so.
But I also really quickly just want to say, like, I don't want people to think that, like, social media is turning people trans.
Yeah, we agree with that.
All right, can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, okay, so my thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just gonna go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun. Try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake.
Yeah, but I think it is also important to say that, like, social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok and I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like, all these different things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have, like...
I think that they should...
She's not responsible for that. Nobody... I'm not responsible for that. She's not responsible. Nobody is responsible for that. You know, as human beings, we are not always right. So...
should go to a doctor that is well-versed in gender care and have the appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand. That's not my problem.
I feel like a lot of folks are going to social media looking for possibility models. They're looking to see if they're okay. I know for me, when I was very young, looking to see if...
So I really didn't like that question. I feel like I didn't like that question. Like, how do you feel if they regret it? It's like, all right, well, I'm not the surgeon, the therapist, and the doctor who's seeing that person. It's just like people regret things. I don't know. I've had so many people DM me, and I've had parents tell me in person, and people tell me in person that I've saved their life, or they came across my page and they didn't feel alone anymore, and whatever. And their 5 years transitioned. Their life is just, they can't thank me enough for speaking up and sharing my experience because they didn't feel alone like they used to. And that's like how I went through it as well. I saw stuff online. I didn't feel alone anymore. And then eventually I got a voice to come out. So
for me, when I was very young, looking to see if there were other people like me, because for a long time I thought that I was
the only one.
Exactly.
I thought I was the only one.
And so feeling like that, like suicide was a thing for me.
Me too.
Right? And so when I did see a possibility model, when I did see somebody that looked like me, that put me in a space where I was like, I'm okay.
Sigh of relief.
Right.
I will say there's also a difference from like showing people that you can have a positive life and then telling them what to do. So I think you on your channel are kind of like, hey, look what I was able to do and how this made me feel, versus like, you should do this because I did this.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
I think,
also, I try my best to be very upfront
right,
about, you know, the
because
issues
we
of
can't help if
transition.
someone's
Exactly.
going to change their mind on something. Like, that's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're humans.
And I have to jump on one more thing with that. Like, if I'm watching her channel and it inspires me to transition, I have been watching white straight men be president for years, and I've not wanted to be president once, so I don't identify with that. We're gonna talk about brainwashing. Let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically.
People with
right, I love that shit because they always say like, yeah, it shouldn't be talked about or whatever, being gay or trans, and you're gonna influence the kids. It's like, well, I saw straight couples my entire life and just regular cis people my entire life on TV and stuff like that, and I still liked girls. Seeing straight couples all the time never influenced me to be straight. I knew that that was the right thing to do in society, but I couldn't help it. Just didn't work. What was this question?
Things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically.
people with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
They pick some evil ass questions here. People with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery. I feel like it depends on the person. It depends on the person. Not everybody who has gender dysphoria needs surgery or wants to transition. There are people who have gender dysphoria that still just don't transition because it's a hard thing to do. I don't even know what I would respond to this, yes or no. You know what? Let's see what they say.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one.
I don't.
convinced.
We all agree.
I think
It's potentially both, though.
Yeah.
I think everyone with gender dysphoria needs to go through a therapeutic process and mental health care before they make that choice for themselves.
Exactly.
I personally confused a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, like, looking among like members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that
People do mix up body dysmorphia and gender dysphoria too. It does happen.
this person is like struggling with body images. I was able to get on estrogen pretty quickly when I was 22, and my mental health declined afterwards, and I attributed it to being still in the wrong body, needing more body modification. I ended up getting sex reassignment surgery. I do believe that transition was sold to me as a hardware fix for my mental issues that were not addressed. I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia. I'm on a spectrum, and I'm ADHD, and I have all those issues that were not helped, and I was still struggling with them after transition, and I still do. Overall, after a few years, I came to a conclusion that I was not in the wrong body, that I'm a gender non-conforming man, and I am a feminine man. That's what I am.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but I've had a lot of binary trans people say that it's not a mental health issue, like if you're trans, and I know I don't agree with that. Like, I think there's a disconnect between the mind and the body. I guess I'm asking that. Like, it's like, do you think that it's a mental health disorder? And
I don't
needs to
think
have
being
therapy?
transgender is a mental health
Disorder,
disorder. I think, you know, gender incongruence is what they're referring to it as now. It's listed as a sexual health concern, but the
Gender incongruence has been moved out of the mental.
gender dysphoria, which is the symptom that arises when you are transgender, is a mental health concern.
So maybe I'm thinking of, like, that's what I'm
Right.
trying to say then in a sense.
And then
Yeah.
once you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and I feel like this is kind of what the prompt is kind of hinting at, if you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition. Whether that be just a social transition, a medical transition, whatever transition fits you, that is the only way to heal your gender dysphoria. When I transitioned, the first thing my mom said to me was, "Can't you just be gay?" It hurt hearing that, but
Me too, Samantha. Me too.
a big reason that she said that
Sorry, Ma. Sorry, Ma.
was she was afraid of what my dad would think. He's always been very, very conservative, very traditional, you could say. He would make comments about trans people, about gay people growing up, so I always knew that he wasn't necessarily accepting. So when it came down to me transitioning, I said to him, I'm going to do this. Either you're going to be the dad that accepts me and supports me through it, or like, goodbye. And he chose to support me, and we're closer than ever now.
And I think a lot of us go through medical transitions to easier go through social transition.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so a lot of our folks that do transition and may detransition, both experiences are valid, but also understanding that we're not mentally ill because we're trans.
Yes.
Right? And I think that there should be a psychiatrist or someone within behavioral health to be able to say, okay, you're in the right frame of mind to make this decision. But I want to just make it very clear that trans people are not dealing with mental health because they're trans.
Absolutely.
I disagree. I feel like transgender is definitely, and elderly trans people afford for it to be classified as mental illness, so it's covered by insurance. Otherwise, why are you getting the surgeries to?
Because of
if it's not a
dysphoria.
medical condition?
The dysphoria is a medical condition.
It is, but it's in your head. I would say that you have some kind of mental disorder if you're trying to mimic a stereotype of opposite sex. to
Right,
But
pass
it's
in
not a
society.
mimic. It's
The
it's
treatment for this
aligning.
mental illness is to transition.
I have a question though,
Yeah.
because
Honestly, I'm just listening because I'm a little confused. All right, good. Hey, Jubilee, good thing you didn't have me on here. You can call me next time, though.
I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis. I always have. But I'm still where I am today.
Can I give you my honest opinion? I think that you were probably misdiagnosed.
I
and
don't
that-
think I was.
So you
Do you
do
feel
have gender
dysphoria
dysphoria?
in your body?
I certainly do now.
Yeah, me too.
Well, yeah.
I-
I
Because of the
you
changes that you made.
want to talk about now, but at the time,
At the time, did you?
I genuinely believed I did. I thought it would save me. And then looking back, I realized that my dysphoria stemmed from some severe trauma that was not handled.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think that mental health step is so important.
Yeah,
Because I've heard this from several other, mostly female detransitioners who we had some form of pretty bad trauma that spawned gender dysphoria symptoms.
Yeah.
And we can disagree about misdiagnosis or something later, but it felt real at the time for me.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it did. I didn't mean that.
And
In
no,
a
I know.
malicious way.
And it's one of those things where that's where the mental health treatment really needs to come in and get to the root of that issue, because oftentimes, specifically with the detransitioners I've talked to, that was ignored. I came out.
Yeah, and also, I mean, well, it makes sense that Luca has gender dysphoria now as well. And also the thing that I already said this, but I think that when you have gender dysphoria, you don't always have to transition, like, because of so many different reasons. Just the money, the social aspect of it, the body modifications that you might need to make, taking hormones or whatever it is that you have to do. It's not a fun, yay, super fun thing that we get to do. It is scary. It does cost money. I mean, you feel great afterwards. Some people do. Most people do. Something that I've always thought and said, even when I was younger, is I do think no matter how many surgeries I have, I will still have gender dysphoria, only because the fact that I know that I'm transgender too, and that's just me. Not everybody is like that. So I will do as much as I can to make myself feel better, but I do still have dysphoria for sure, even after being on T for 10 years. Yeah, it's not a fun thing. It's not a fun thing to have dysphoria. It's not a fun little game that some people claim we're playing. It's really not. I would rather have just been cis. Like, even a cis woman, I don't care. But here I am.
I came out to my parents in a mental health facility after telling the therapist that I thought I was transgender. And she told me we had to tell your parents so that way you can get the help you need. It led to me seeing a gender therapist who, honestly, the issues I was facing were never addressed. To this day, no one ever addressed the fact that I had severe, trauma and exploitation going on as a young teenager. Instead, I was kind of just affirmed in, you believe this, and instead of even just a little pushback, it led me to the point where the very first medical intervention I ever had was a double mastectomy at 16. A few months after that, I started testosterone because it was the next step of what I was supposed to do.
God intended for there to be only two genders.
I don't like that question. Also, not everybody is religious. Okay, whatever. I'm just going to listen in on this one because...
I'm a 27-year-old transgender woman. I am a wolf.
Oh, here we go.
And I'm
Fucking this fucking guy.
Okay, you go first.
Okay, so as a Christian, I truly believe that God created male and female, and
This should never be a subject of discussion. I don't know why they put this question in here. I really don't like that question. You can't, it doesn't, there's also many religions, many gods, whatever. Stupid question.
Created that throughout life, throughout the nature, throughout the wildlife, throughout, Earth itself. And then the arguments come up into the ocean sides of, well, there's these asexual creatures and stuff like that. Well, they were designed that way for a reason, and we humans were not designed to, we were designed to procreate and be able to bring life back to the earth, because we live and we die, we live and we die. It's a rotation of a process of life in itself, and it's its own journey. So I truly do believe that there is male and there is female, but I can respect people's choices. However, that's where I stand on it.
Well, I'm not Christian, but I do believe there's only two biological sexes, and somehow that's how it's been designed, whether it's by higher power or by evolution. I do believe gender expression has been on a spectrum for centuries. So we do have references to people who've been cross-dressing, we have references to eunuchs. And as somebody who went through transition and detransition, when I started taking testosterone, it's almost like reminded me of my original blueprint. And I feel like I went against my original blueprint and I did a lot of damage to it, and I just cannot go back to who I was, because without my testicles, I'm just too far gone in my transition. So that's where I'm at.
Can the disagree step forward?
Yeah, you know, we have historically spent more time focusing on and celebrating several genders. There are several different cultures throughout the world that celebrate the different genders, and to negate the fact that they exist and to negate their validity is just wrong.
There are as many intersex people as there are redheaded people on the planet. I can name 12 people at the top of my head who are born intersex, so to pretend like there's man and woman is just erasing an entire group of people. The God you speak of, the first God that intersex people get to meet is the doctor, because it's up to their discretion of just what you're gonna be when they mutilate their body to be a man or a woman, and that is not fair.
Also, gender and male and female is not the same
Biological
thing.
sex are different things.
Yeah, we're talking about gender, which is like gender identity, the social aspects to being a man or a woman. But male and female dictate sex, so like body parts.
I disagree with the having sex and gender being two different things.
Okay,
I
well,
believe
that's a
them to be
fact.
one. So I believe that there is
Gender and sex are two different things. It's they usually go hand in hand. I don't know, all the time.
same. They're one and the same. They're not different, but we have evolutionary problems within the humanity, because I also see that there are intersex animals that do exist, and that's how they're born. But I also do believe that the initial design was for man and woman, and then somewhere along the way, viruses, mutations, diseases, plagues, all that type of stuff that we have in the world does play a part back onto the world itself. But I believe the initial intent was for God to create Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I'm just going to say it.
That's homophobic.
I know it sounds homophobic, and I understand
No,
I'm
it
hitting.
is.
That's homophobic. This is why you can't bring religion into this, because you can't. If you're, it's.
Homophobic.
That's okay.
Homophobia made me transition, and that's what you're perpetuating right now. I grew up in a very homophobic family, and since I was a kid, I was always brainwashed, said gay is bad. My parents were not happy that I was naturally feminine. They always tried to make me more masculine. They tried to give me to masculine sports. I was mercilessly bullied at school for my femininity, constantly being told that I'm not a real man, that I'm a sissy. And when I came out to my parents as gay, they took me to therapists and tried to do pretty much conversion therapy on me, which failed.
So I don't believe in God. I believe in people that exist right in front of me, and I believe they should have the right to exist. And so
I'm not saying they don't have the right to exist. I'm
no,
just
but
saying,
I mean,
I'm just saying that
I mean,
was the
they
initial
weren't mistakes
intent.
either. They're just
You can't, because the reason you can't argue this is because David's going to say, well, this is how God make it, or this is how God made it. And Aris is going to say, well, I don't believe in your God, so that doesn't even make any sense to me. That's why you can't fucking... If you have two people like this, there's no... It's not gonna work.
just here the way you and I are here right now, and they are who they are, and we have to accept people as they are.
Right, and there are biological differences in trans folks. When we look at the brainstem, you know, our brainstems are different. Like that's
Neurologically.
Right, neurologically, we're different.
Yeah,
And
male
so
and female are
how-
different, exactly.
Trans people are different.
Yes.
They've found a distinct difference in the
white matter.
cortex.
There is no biomarker for trans. Some brain scan of some gay males is identical to female brain, but there is no biomarker for trans. Please don't spread misinformation.
There is science that hints towards it. It's just not confirmed.
No,
Well,
there's,
it's not
there's
confirmed,
research.
so-
that
So
is out
therefore,
there
it
that
falls
have-
under the belief that there is, but there is no scientific fact to back that up, which therefore I believe that God's initial intent was to create male
I
and
think
female.
if God intended to, if God exists and in the way that you believe and just intended to make male and female, then
And
we wouldn't be sitting here. I believe
Intersex people wouldn't
in a
exist.
higher power, right, of my own, and God is not this thing that creates rules and binary situations and laws that can be broken or really made. We're just all here.
Yeah.
You know, like I was born in a female body, but I was never a girl. Never, ever, ever. I can't explain why, but that is my truth, that is the fact, that is who I've always been, and there's no way that I'm gonna look up at this guy at some guide and be like, oh yeah, you made me as a mistake.
Transitioning improved my sex life.
Absolutely. Never had one prior. Sorry, got an ad. Keep getting ads, man.
Who wants to start?
I could start.
And I'm embarrassed.
Not to say that my sex life was bad before, but I think transitioning and coming into my body and feeling comfortable in my skin allowed me to open up more and allowed me to not only be better in bed, but also explore what my sexuality looks like.
Yeah.
Being trans also like made sex really complicated for me too, because I'm a straight guy, and I pass very well, and majority of the women that I've been with, I would have to eventually kind of like break it to them that I was trans and deal with a lot of rejection. And with somebody, I would never let girls touch me or see me without clothes on. Not having a penis made me feel inferior as a man, and that no one would want me, which is why I like rejected that part of myself and never even let it be loved. It took a lot of really accepting that people were going to accept me and be attracted to me and love me and want to give me pleasure regardless of what was in my pants. And that took a long time. It took until I was like, I think I was 21 when my ex-girlfriend and I started dating. From that point on, I realized that just letting someone love me was half the battle. And once I let that piece come into play, I mean, it changed my life.
Yeah, I never thought that I would be able to be loved or even liked by people if they found out I was trans. And that is absolutely not the case. Now you all harass me in my DMs. So, I was wrong on that one.
Y'all can go, I'll go last.
I mean, so even though I detransitioned, in the beginning, especially when I was on hormones, like it increased my sex drive a lot, and there were a lot of aspects to that was like enjoyable to explore my fluidity for sure. I was able to date a lot of people, and I think like from detransitioning, it's like the opposite of that. Like my sex drive completely changed in a way that like there's good aspects to not being horny 24/7. It helped me be more comfortable in my body, even with detransitioning, which sounds weird, but like having a trans male body was like so different from the norm. So like I had to accept certain parts of myself. So like even with detransitioning, it helps me accept like certain parts of myself that I don't have still.
Absolutely.
I did identify as a gay man before I transitioned. And like those relationships, I feel like I always kind of had like out of body experiences when we were like intimate. And even after I transitioned, before I had bottom surgery, I like, just like the anxiety and the dysphoria that I would feel whenever I was intimate or like a partner would try to be intimate with me was just like crippling.
Yeah.
So then when I had surgery and I felt more affirmed in my body and, you know, it feels right to me now, I'm finally able to have those intimate connections with people and, you know, form those deeper bonds. So it's really helped me a lot.
I'm so happy for you. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
When I came out as trans when I was 18, I moved to Miami, and it wasn't until I got my gender-affirming surgeries where I was where I did like lose my virginity, because I was just not comfortable doing that. I was like, I'm not presenting in my best light, and I think I could get there.
Yeah, for me it was like I'm not fitting the role that I'm supposed to play in this relationship.
It felt weird,
absolutely.
and you also attract a different type of partner. Back in my day, I used to attract what we call a chaser. Versus someone who was genuinely attracted to the female form, which is someone who I wanted to, like, that's the role I felt. And so that's where I was comfortable. And now I'm comfortable in Virginia.
Yeah, it's prior to like pre-transition, well, I transitioned when I was 15, 16. I didn't date anybody at all. Didn't kiss anybody, didn't hook up with anybody. I did not want to. I did not want to be dated or date in that form, because I'm a transformer. I wanted to be in my final form. Okay, but yeah, no, it definitely felt wrong, and I think that would have been really, really not good for me, I think. Yeah, So everything after I transitioned is when I started dating girls and just doing it all, I guess.
In Virginia, like Virginia, the T word did not exist. That was on Jerry Springer and Maury Povich, and that's where that stayed. no one was trans. And so I transitioned when I was about 18. I moved to Miami, and my joke is that I hit the tarmac and I said, I'm a woman, by the way. I remember I came out to my mom and I was super nervous because I'd come out as gay years and years before because that was so much easier. But when I came out, I remember my mom just asked if I was happy, if I was healthy, and if I was gonna finish school because she had already paid for it. And I said yes.
Can the disagree step forward?
Transition definitely ruined my sex life. I was fine with my penis, but a year after estrogen, I felt like that part didn't belong on me anymore. So I went ahead and had sex reassignment surgery. After that, my sex drive was gone pretty much. I kept on having complications. I wasn't able to keep my neovagina open despite rigorous dilation. I had multiple revisions, including colon vaginoplasty. I just got some of my sex drive back last year when I started detransitioning with testosterone, but it's kind of traumatic to have male sex drive back without my penis. Also, I want to say that sexuality is fluid. My sexuality has definitely changed once I lost my testosterone. Before, I was strictly attracted to men. After I lost my testosterone, I was attracted to people in general because now I didn't have this like male sex drive, so I couldn't relate to men as much, as I wanted to have sex, but I just wanted to hold hands and cuddle. Now my body dysmorphia / actual gender dysphoria as well is worse than ever before. I do feel like I'm stuck in a surgically created body. I just don't think I've been really myself by trying to become a woman. Yeah, so transition did take a lot from me.
Must be really, really hard. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
If you had found the results that you desired in the beginning, would you feel differently than you do now?
No, because I realized I just miss being a man, I just miss being obsessed about sex and money. I don't want to do the whole emotional thing. And I'm talking about stereotypes, okay? So I regret, it's just like now I'm a medical patient for life. Also having sex drive back, it just reminds me that I lost all these years. I could have been having fun, whether it's chasers or, I definitely have internalized homophobia. So internalized homophobia also pushed me into transition because I felt like chasers weren't good enough because I wanted to be a woman. I wanted to escape my homosexuality. But now I realize at the end of the day, I'm a gay man and I'm still living with internalized homophobia because therapists actually never helped me with that.
It's fascinating that you say that because I dated men and women, and in my transition, I felt like I had an internalized homophobia when I was with men because I didn't feel like a gay man. And that was really hard for me to
Fuck. It's just heavy.
Figure out because I had this journey for so long, and a lot of sexual experiences were good, but I was on Grindr and I'm sleeping with these men and they're treating me how I would want to be treated in a social setting, but I'm like, I was really, really masculine in my presentation, but I tended to be kind of feminine in my roles within sex. And so I think that also got me to realize that I wanted to detransition because it was a reflection of the relationships that I had. To follow kind of some stereotypes, I did miss being a woman in some of those social settings, with how women interacted with me, with how men interacted with me. So yeah, that's heavily relatable to that for sure. So I do not regret my transition. Shocking, I know. That was a really great time for me in the beginning. I really was able to explore and express myself in ways that I could not have done without hormones.
I did an interview with Alia, by the way. If you guys want to check it out, I'll link it in the description or at the end of the video. But she's so cool, super nice, so well-spoken, awesome person.
Surgery. I learned so much about how people treat people based on gender and looks in general. I feel like I would not be the person, especially the confidence and security that I have within myself if I didn't transition as presenting as a woman in this world. My dynamic with men in general is so much different. I mean, I was very insecure, very submissive, very quiet, and now I'm able to speak up for myself because of that.
Yeah, I was actually gonna say, during my transition, I didn't actually have a high sex drive from the hormones. And ever since I came back, my sex drive has been higher ever since. And I think it's because I'm no longer on the estrogen. My testosterone levels are increased after I changed back to being who I was originally born as. And it also kind of opened up my eyes to say, maybe I wasn't really a female. This is probably what I would like my future spouse to have, to look upon it. And I'm proud that I actually have that sex drive back again, because I felt like I lost it for a long time.
Yeah, testosterone will do it to you. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, I don't know what I just did.
LGBTQ.
Back again, because I felt like I lost it for a long time.
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
What do you guys think? There's a lot of meanies in that community. So it's like yes and no. It's probably yes and no. But no, I've been, from everybody, from every angle, I've been put down. So I don't know. It's like sort of, kind of. They are, but they aren't. Yeah. See, there's a lot of meanies in there. They kind of want you to live like, I just remember, or even now, they want you to be a specific way sometimes, and but with every community, there's going to be people who disagree. Sometimes if you're not the other person's idea of trans or gay, they're really mean to you. Other gay people, other trans people, whatever. And it's stupid. It's dumb.
Musical chairs.
Musical chairs?
Yeah. I'm embarrassed to agree. That is true information.
There's still so much transphobia within the LGBT people in the LGBT community that hasn't been addressed yet.
Shoot, there's transphobia within trans people.
Absolutely. When I was transitioning in high school, I searched for acceptance from the cis hetero world, and now I feel like I'm doing the opposite and searching for acceptance from my own community half the time. Like when I was in college, the queer community on my campus hated me because I did like heteronormative like guy stuff. I played lacrosse, I was in a frat, but like I wasn't that guy, I guess, that they had in their head. And every time
That is so true, actually. Yeah. Especially being I'm just gonna be like, being a straight guy is, even though I'm trans, still looked down upon by some people in the community, and it's like cringe or whatever. And it's like Sam Collins comes out as exposing people for being heterophobic. No, I'm just joking though. So, but yeah, no. People have definitely been like actually weirded out that I'm a straight guy.
every time I would go to the LGBT club meetings, I would get like they would stare into my soul, like I was just this awful thing. And it's always just made me feel invisible and small in whatever space I'm in. And I find that just really disheartening.
And it happens in a lot of other cultures and communities as well too. So
it's funny that
just happens.
You mentioned like the transitioning in high school part and like that shift from, you know, searching for acceptance outside and then turning around and then having to search for acceptance within the community.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew, and then you get that icky feeling that when I was still living as having to search for acceptance within the community.
Yeah.
Because I did notice that when I was still living as a trans man, when I passed really well, all of a sudden it was like I wasn't welcome in these spaces anymore until they knew, and then you get that icky feeling of like you only want me here because of that. And you know, now I have the deep.
Yeah, that's also a good point. Okay.
Trans aspect where no community wants me. No one. Like I'm still part of the I'm part of the LGB part, but I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all of a sudden detransitioning was the thing that that I've been called a traitor.
Yeah,
I've been,
me too.
you know, it's,
Me too.
they don't want me.
Luca, I'm gonna cry. No, detransition people definitely get shunned out of every space, essentially, which is really, really fucked up. And like that's why I'm fucking crying right now. That's why I want to educate myself on detransition and all of that stuff, because detransitioners still went through the same experience that I did. You know, whether that was they thought they had gender dysphoria or they actually do have gender dysphoria, but they decided to detransition. I don't know. It just really sucks that sometimes we can't have these conversations with, and then transphobes will use detransitioners as a talking piece or just a what's the fucking word for it? I feel like there's something in my fucking eye. They will use detransitioners as a way to get their point across from something when that shouldn't be the case at all. Detransitioners are just saying their experience. And, you know, there are different people who do go on about being detransitioned and say really weird, mean things about the trans community and stuff like that, which I think is inappropriate. But when you're sharing your experience and you're telling people, hey, I went into the therapist and they gave me the right to go ahead and start tea after an appointment or 2 appointments, and they're just telling their story, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I don't think that should be happening. We have to be seeing somebody for a long time. It is not, I don't think being trans is such a light thing at all. It's a long process. It's not rainbows and sunshines the whole time, especially in the beginning when you're really, really going for this and going to do this.
The rest of the world doesn't want me.
That's not true. That's not true.
It can often feel that way. It can feel isolating.
Yeah, but it feels really
that way.
isolating. Like, this is not a club.
It's not a
You
club.
know, and it's not like a personality trait that I'm just taking up, and God forbid one day I change my mind. I won't, but like, or something happens where I have to detransition. I would hope that the people who stood by my side through everything else would still be there for me because of who I am, period. And not because of an effing label over my head.
And even when I transitioned, I dealt with the traitor to everyone. It was, you know, oh, you want to be a man and the patriarchy. And I'm just like, I get it, but also. Yeah. But what I found very interesting was like this divide between trans men and trans women. When I first started doing a lot of advocacy, I was told that just being in the space, that I was taking up too much room, that I was taking up too much space and don't speak and all of these things. And I was like, wait a minute, but I'm trans too, right?
Yeah.
This community also belongs to us too.
Right.
So that was something that I grappled with for a while.
I hung out with a lot of gay women, and then when I transitioned, I definitely lost my space there, and that was like really hard for me to navigate, because being shunned out of these female spaces for me was really hard and difficult. And then when I got to the trans male community, there was a lot of competition. Who looked the best, who passed the best, like that was very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Shoot, fortunately I had a full beard, so it was like an easy, like, you know what I mean? Like, but still, like, I heavily resonate with trans men still, and I definitely resonate with trans women from detransitioning and gender non-conforming people. So it's like, where do I belong?
Weird position to be in, because it's like one community, like I said, doesn't really want you, but you don't fit in. You can't really go all the way back, so you don't fit in with the rest of them.
We just shouldn't have to categorize.
Yeah,
Like, we shouldn't have to float around, wonder where we belong. Like,
we
it
have
shouldn't-
the
I don't
other
understand why you have to
detransitioners,
like,
but even then, we're all still vastly different individuals who have vastly different life experience, political views, religious beliefs.
Right.
You know,
You're not
experience
just
how we
detransitioning.
yeah,
Right,
exactly.
that's no different
Experience how
with
we
the
got
trans
that.
community, right?
In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like you're, even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual for almost the first time after, you know, spending my high school years being lumped in by both the LGBT community and the rest of the people in a category. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys so much.
I do
This was
appreciate
really
it.
awesome.
So fantastic.
It's great to talk to all of you.
Honestly, I thought that was a great discussion. Well, actually, after this video was filmed, I hung out with Samantha and Ari Alia and Luca, and they are all super nice people. I knew Samantha and Alia, but I met Ari and Luca, and we all just hung out, had a good time. We talked about trans shit in such a, it was good. It was good. And I thought this discussion was really, really good. The comments are a little bit mean and mad, but I think that all of these people kind of almost all agree with each other and can see the differences with each other. And surely there was definitely some, sorry, let me bring my big face back up. Surely there had to be, obviously, disagreements and things that are probably cut out. It's a long video. It's probably a really long discussion. But I thought it was fucking, like, I just want to look at some of these comments really quickly. I got a stupid one. My nephew, 5 years old, swears up and down he's a literal race car. We're not planning on scheduling body work at the local auto store. Like, these types of comments are so fucking stupid. They don't even make any sense. Like, you just completely, I didn't even listen to that whole entire discussion. Like, I think if anything, I don't want to put words in people's mouths. But I really think when it comes down to it, trans people and detrans people both agree that you have to see a therapist for an extended amount of time, and you have to see a doctor for an extended amount of time, whatever, and actually talk about these things and not just go jump the fucking gun. That's like, I think that's something that we would all agree on, all of us for the most part, except for like extreme people on either side. But like, it's just, I don't know, dude. But anyways, with all that being said, I thought this was a great video. I had a lot of fun reacting to it. Let me know what you guys think. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. It's only been out for a couple of days, but I love to hear people's opinions, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. So, hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next week with a new video. Bye-bye.